777. Delete house 777. This is Dr. Eros Tripakisus, some boy. Now let's take a look at something. It's about is evil wickedness just make believe and fantasize? That's what someone would like you to think. I'll say no, it is actual. But look at so many people jumped on the bandwagon. Faith, by the way, is the name of a power. Sophia. Pisces, to be exact. Pisces. Powers, God, faith and all that. But do you see this on front page of Google? Tim McGraw and Faith heals daughter Grace Wiles in a wicked song. Wicked. But what reason would such thing be possible? Because good wickedness can't coexist. So, do you see that fish sign on her father's arm? That's a sign of the Christians, the followers of the Christos. But wicked song associated with Christos and the house of Apollo, they both can't be good and wicked unless they're both wicked. What did no house of Apollo or followers stand up for this? Because most likely they'll say, "Oh no, they're celebrities and they're a man and they could do whatever they want in their minds, unless they were just being wicked." There it is again. So unless the message is that the house of Apollo or those who bear the crucifix are wicked, then this should have been reprimanded. Unless they'll fancy their children no matter what they do type of attitude. I think even the great singer Tim McGraw doesn't truly believe in God or his family, like many other people out there. And this is very sad because he lives his living like he was passing. And somewhere in Georgia where they eat those peaches, another victim of chasing spinning units and giving up their soul. Good people, good men. What a fucking waste. I believe their belief system says don't associate evil with wickedness. Stay away from evil and wickedness. That's what the House of Apollo teaches. So that's not the case. That's not a problem. These are tattoos that they share. And they claim to be marketing off of the belief in that religion. Unless these are fake tattoos and just to promote something. To get more people into that kind of living style. Maybe they don't believe in God after all. Country music celebrities throwing up the sign of Belphegor. And this is supposed to be the most godly type of religion, or music. This was wholesome and decent. Now it's corrupted too. Even my son Enrique Iglesias threw up that cursed sign of Belphegor, pledged their allegiance towards wickedness. Here's his other one. Crucifix. But this is parents, I suspect, who will stand by their children no matter what. And maybe they didn't call this out, but their followers, these popular people are supporting religions and belief systems. That they like Buddhists or the followers of the Christos. If they really did believe, they wouldn't be associating wickedness. Grace is lined up with wickedness on these ads. And these people put this on Google. A lot of people are taking the fall and going to corrupt many. I believe their own religions say that kind of stuff. They're even honoring this Britney Spears on Google with she said "Let's go crazy," and promoted same gender laying, even though she herself probably never did that. And racism, because her dancer was a liker of men, brown-skinned mortal. But she wouldn't ever consort with a brown-skinned mortal, but she'll go with pink-skinned mortal, Kevin in the House of Fairlane, hat backwards, sagging pants, drugs, slanted eyes, holding himself in that posture, acting like he's hardcore from the streets, but she wouldn't go with the real, actual one. And she was telling the nation of women, young ones, to go crazy. She sold her soul. Many of these people are doing it. Oh, gee, the darkest sci-fi. They can't say good. They're just following the bandwagon. And this is on Google and then even Marvel Comics. They're going to get this creature here. This is a classic villain named Vermin. And he's no hero, but they're not even trying to stand against evil or wickedness. Many of these people have just given in. That's the reason that gods probably will not get involved helping mortals, because they seem to just go for whoever has potency. One moment they're honoring Hyperboreai or humans. Another moment they're honoring Olympians. Another moment they're honoring gods. Another moment they're honoring demons and devs. At the present moment, at this video, they're honoring Belphegor and the wicked. They have no loyalty and no devotion. They keep jumping back and towards whoever God's potency. Mankind is meant to be slaves. Mortals are meant to be slaves or annihilated. I'm sure gods and demons and devs feel the same way. There's no loyalty, integrity on them. They got floating morals and ethics, and they keep changing back and forth. This is Vermin. This is no champion, not even in the comic books. But, well, he is a brown-skinned individual who got turned into a rat. That goes to tell you that's racism. But you see in comic book people talking about racism in comics, they'll get you talking about the pretty colors. Here's some interesting racism on Google. Again, people are writing this there. Long standing that Magneto and Professor X were based on Malcolm X and Martin Luther. Professor X and Magneto were actually, this is what somebody wrote on August 21st, 2021, last solstice. There's a lot of this promoting their race supremacy again, or people's doing this. They say they're not based on, and see, if it's written like that, that means this is an opinion. It's not a fact. Even though this is long after Stan Lee is gone, and it said that Professor X and Magneto were long rumored to be stand-ins towards the African and civil rights leaders. One was talking about peace, and the other one was talking about any means necessary. Larry said these words. Now, this is contradicting Bryan Singer's movie. This is contradicting Stan Lee's, who was in the United States, and the X-Men were people of color, children of the Atom, as in Adama, mahogany skin. And there was those who talk about nonviolent movement. They're changing even this definition. This is getting rid of even that truth. But just don't take my own advice towards it, because in the own words of Bryan Singer. Here's another person saying, sure, you look at these people, they're pink-skinned mortals. They're telling you these are the reasons it's not. And you'll think that this got Screen Rant behind this, CBR. This is a racial movement to shred away even at Stan Lee's and Bryan Singer's own ideas. X-Men is supposed to be people of color. The Beast was supposed to be Frederick Douglass. This is all known, and I don't even care about the comics in that fashion. But attacking every aspect that one can towards a new racial supremacy disguised as fantasy and geeks by their own naming themselves geeks. This is racism at its finest, and this racism is based off of lies. The creators did say, he said here, and this is what it says. Now, anybody who doesn't read this isn't going to know. But it says, so while the creators never specifically said that Professor X is based on Martin Luther Jr., let's take a look and see. And this is what originally says Stan Lee could see the X-Men as a metaphor towards the civil rights movement. So now this geek said that going against Stan Lee's for their own racial supremacy, causing a race battle and racial tensions based off those who are too lazy just to read itself. But Stan Lee himself said that the X-Men are the civil rights movement, but they look pink skin in the movie. But we get images like this so then by going by the actors' portrayal of pink skin X-Men, then they say that it's not based. They use this as the ammunition to say that this is not based off of the civil rights because they change it to what the movie shows in the name of fantasy or portrayal or a redemption or their version of it. But this is supposed to be Professor X, and that's supposed to be Magneto. This is supposed to be Malcolm X, and this is supposed to be Martin Luther Jr. Now, keep in mind that you see the shortness of Martin Luther on the L side and the tallness of Malcolm Little on the R side, and the shortness of Charles Xavier and the suit and the tallness of the red outfitted Magneto. Well, keep in mind that Malcolm X or Malcolm Little, his nickname was Red, and he said by any means necessary. Now they're trying to change these definitions. Stan Lee himself declared this was so. There's only one, if you look at the comics with that phrase, look at a stinking mutant. Look at those muties. Muties, go back. Muties. It was taking place of a particular end phrase, a racial slur. People, they're rewriting this history even in front of their own faces, remaking shows like the Vikings and the Eastlander. This is a new supremacist and it's done digitally. You got to be very vigilant and call this stuff out when you see it. So you're going to sit here and tell me that that's not a black guy and this is not a pink skin mortal saying you dare call that a human. I think they said the same thing about those people, but now they act like this never happened. But hey, don't take my advice for it. They think people don't remember Bryan Singer and Stan Lee's own quotes. So I'll show you. And if you choose to keep listening to these lies that these geeks are putting on Google to make a racial supremacy site or on these other websites that you might see on YouTube and elsewhere, instead of looking at the truth in the comments and using your own brains, the only sense that the generator of you all had given you, your own minds, to see this truth. He's pointing at a blackened guy there, and he said, you dare call that thing a human. What's his skin you? What's his skin you? But none of these characters in the movies, by the way, are played by brown-skinned people. They're played by blue people, or they'll go into makeup and add claws, leaving out the racial undertones, and it's based off the civil rights movement. But hey, hold on towards a moment.
Of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream. My poor little children,
Professor Xavier had a
they
dream.
live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We don't see any American dream.
And this is Malcolm X,
Only the
or
American
Malcolm Little.
nightmare.
And what you and I have to let the man know is we are peaceful people. We are loving people. We love everybody who loves us. But we don't love anybody who doesn't love us. We're nonviolent with people who are nonviolent with us. But we are not nonviolent with anyone who is violent with us. All of you know I'm not an integrationist. I still believe the best thing for us to do is go back home to Africa.
I feel
That's
that
Malcolm
nonviolence
Little.
is really the only way that we can follow, because violence is just so self-defeating.
That's Martin Luther speaking now.
For the Negro community that it solves. You can, through violence, burn down a building, but you can't establish justice. You can murder a murderer, but you can't murder through violence. You can murder a hater, but you can't murder hate. And what we are trying to get rid of is hate and injustice and all of these other things that continue the long night of man's inhumanity to man.
I would like to make a few comments concerning the difference between the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution.
Excuse the racial slur.
When you study the historic nature of revolutions, you haven't got a revolution that doesn't involve bloodshed.
That's what Magneto says.
I say if you're afraid to bleed, you don't have a peaceful revolution. You don't have a turn the other cheek revolution. There's no such thing as a nonviolent revolution. Only kind of revolution that's nonviolent is the Negro Revolution. The only revolution based on loving your enemy is the only revolution in which the goal is a desegregated lunch counter, a desegregated theater, a desegregated park, and a desegregated public toilet. You can sit down next to white folks on the toilet. That's no revolution. You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way by any means necessary.
So, to act like you don't have the sense enough to see that Malcolm X becomes Magneto with the M. Charles Xavier, well, Malcolm X's name goes into Martin Luther, has Magneto, and Malcolm X name becomes Professor X, because Stanley, one of these two people who are fighting for their people, which we're called the mutants, in the 60s, the civil battles, racial tensions, highest coming to an end. One's talking about peace, one's talking about by any means necessary violence if they have to. And now some geek is going like this. They can't see that because of their own growing up without getting the good-looking maiden, or they're not endowed with a good penis, or whatever their reason that they have as personal grudge. They're going to bring that supremacy, just like that one guy who shot up that church, who was an outcast of his group. This is what we're looking at. People are taken to these platforms like Google and YouTube to attack with their own racial lies, or what they want it to be, just because they have a personal grudge. It's not all pink-skinned mortals who are sharing this, and it's not all brown-skinned mortals who are holding a grudge against pink-skinned mortals. But it's these geeks, these losiers, who come out here and they write stuff they think nobody's going to figure it out to support their own personal supremacides, which is based off of a lie. But if somebody doesn't stop that, it will grow and fester into a bigger problem, because then they'll start taking action when they get enough followers, and then become something like a Hitler, something like a UEP Newton. Then the many will find themselves the army of the one. Now, Malcolm X, for sake of comic book writers, will want to play with people's imagination and intelligence. Somebody should obviously be able to see he made Magneto red because Malcolm X's name was originally, his nickname was red because his mane and his hair. Charles Xavier switches the X towards Magneto and gives it to Charles Xavier, and he's talking about peace. And he was the one of those two who was in the wheelchair for a moment because somebody tried to assassinate him twice in his living. And one was talking about peace, the other one was talking about violence. And it was in the 60s. And then the X-Men just happened to come out at the same moment. Instead of a racial slur with an N, it becomes an M. But they're telling you that you don't have enough sense to think for yourself to even notice this.
Hit the shelves. You have Martin Luther King Jr. delivering his I months before the X-Men.
6 months prior, X-Men got to the shelves.
Delivering his I Have a Dream speech at the March for Racial Equality on Washington. Now this was a huge cultural moment that everyone who was living in America was aware of, including Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who incorporated Martin Luther King's ideologies into Xavier, where Xavier has his dream of peaceful coexistence with humans, just like Martin Luther King has his dream of blacks having peaceful coexistence with whites. Now, on the other side, you have Malcolm X, all right? And he believed that blacks and whites could never peacefully coexist and that they should segregate and have their own government and their own society and their own stores and just everything separate. He also advocated the use of violence in self-defense. And these ideologies were put into Magneto, who believes that mutants and humans will never be able to peacefully coexist. And
Homo superior.
they just need to take over, and that's it.
Homo
So
superior.
what I'm saying is that Professor X and Magneto are an allegory for the philosophical ideologies proposed by Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X.
You know, Martin Luther King said, the moral arc of the universe bends slowly, but it bends towards justice.
Also in 1963,
This is brought to you by Comic Girl 19. So check she out. Bryan Singer's own mouth says, he says through all X-Men 1, 2, 3, and Quad, that Magneto, Malcolm X, Martin Luther Jr., that they're the Malcolm X and Martin Luther, a comic book mythology. The same guys were going to create also the Black Panther. So I'm sure some geek would say that it's not about the T'Challa, and Wakanda is not supposed to be about the UEP Newton and Angela Davis and Bobby Seale's movement. Don't let it take away your history. You guys need to stand up for facts, towards truth. Not so much as to burn the same racial tensions once spurred by people who did drugs and promoted their own supremacy agendas. But if you're going to battle against someone, this goes out to those geeks. You're going to battle, do it without lies and do it with the truth. And you need any proof about Magneto and Malcolm X and the X-Men who was developed in the 60s, and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, that was their take on racial tensions. It's an obvious metaphorical correlation between mutants and racial minorities.
The notion that, in a way, professed opportunity to show how those young minds would evolve. It was always very interesting to me when I approached, the early X-Men pictures. The notion that, in a way, Professor X was kind of like a Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement, and Magneto was a kind of Malcolm X character. Both had very similar ideologies, similar identifications, but at the same time, very different ways of achieving their goals. One thing the X-Men is characters with a lot of depth, and many characters, all of which have their own backstories.
The war is still coming, Charles, and I intend to fight it. By any means necessary. And I will always be there. Old friend.
And watch, this will be Malcolm X, and he's going to knock down the king.
Our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here. As many of you know, last March, when it was announced that I was no longer in the Black Muslim movement,
It's supposed to be the
it was
Brotherhood.
pointed out
It's supposed to be the Brotherhood of
that
Evil
it was my
Mutants.
intention to work among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans and to try and form some type of organization or create a situation where the young people, our young people, the students and others, could study the problems of our people for a period of time and then come up with a new analysis
Xavier's School
and give us
gets
some new ideas and some new suggestions as to how to approach a problem that too many other people had been playing around with for too long.
Professor at Xavier's School gives
And
to
that
youngsters.
we would have some kind of meeting and determine at a later date whether to form a black nationalist party or a black nationalist army.
Mutant Superior, Homo Superior, Magneto.
There have been many of our people across the country from all walks of life who have taken it upon themselves to try and pool their ideas and to come up with some kind of solution to the problem that confronts all of our people. And tonight we are here to try and get an understanding of what it is they've come up with. Also, recently, a organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our Organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way.
His magnetism is drawing those millions of people to listen to him and to follow him. Magneto.
Bring about the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere and first here in the United States. And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
But this jabroni wrote this. You people do your... I wouldn't go for that if I was any of that kind of race, period. You do your own math. You can see for yourself. But it is Magneto, Malcolm X, Martin Luther is Professor Xavier. Don't be deceived by these liars. Let these geeks bow their own bows without lies. Bleak House 777.